Thank you, Lauren. I will be discussing the gains and losses of the Challenger space shuttle. A little background on the Challenger is a space shuttle that exploded mid-flight on January 28, 1986, and it killed 7 crew members, and the cause of this was the temperature was way too cold for them to launch. The night before the launch, according to an oral history report, No, they don't mean the shuttle, by Margaret Lazarus Dean, Randy Kellery, the staff counsel for the Presidential Commission on the Space Shuttle Challenger accident, said the engineers from Morton Thiokol were concerned about the joint sealing the night before the launch. They said you can't fly in these conditions. The next morning, NASA flew anyways. This is a lack of communication between them and conflict. They weren't listening to what the engineers had to say. NASA launched anyways. A CBS evening news anchor by the last name of Rather said NASA argued that nobody should be surprised when disasters happen and that we need to accept the inevitable. So the government's reaction, President Ronald Reagan made a speech at 5 p.m. from the Oval Office that night. He said, 19 years ago, almost to the day, we lost 3 astronauts in a terrible accident on the ground, but we've never lost an astronaut in flight. We've never had a tragedy like this, and perhaps we've forgotten the courage it took for the crew of the shuttle, but they, the Challenger 7, were aware of the dangers but overcame them and did their jobs brilliantly. We mourn 7 heroes. We mourn their loss as a nation together. And then less than a week later, on February 3rd, President Ronald Reagan ordered a special investigation of the accident. The final report after the accident led to a 2.5-year suspension of the shuttle. And then from the Huffington Post article, these are the most heartbreaking images from the Challenger disaster by Chris McGonigal. These are a couple images from the public's actual reaction. They had family members and friends standing around the Kennedy Space Station watching the launch. So here's spectators witnessing the disaster. And then 2,500 people participated in a memorial service in Concord, New Hampshire for the high school teacher Krista McAuliffe. And then according to the article, 4 Challenger families get settlement. Each will receive at least $750,000. Thiokol to pay 60% from the Los Angeles Times by Ronald J. Ostro on December 30th, 1986. 4 of the families of the 7 members killed settled with the government for total damages exceeding $750,000 for each family. Morton Thiokol and corporations made the solid rocket boosters, so they provided 60% of the sum. And then settlement will provide for payments over an extended period and designed to provide for financial securities for the families of the crew members. And then according to the article, Experts Ponder Effective Pressure on Shuttle Blow-Up by Jeffrey R. Smith, he stated, based on NASA's own figures, the budget office estimates that the agency will need an extra $142.5 million this year and another $115 million over its fiscal year 1987 budget request just to deal with the cost of the accident and its aftermath. NASA estimates $341 million for the expenses involved in the accident, plus replacement of equipment lost in the accident. $350 million for any shuttle system modifications suggested by the investigation, and modifying the shuttle solid rocket booster will cost more than $200 million. If a few items require substantial redesign, then the total cost of modifications could cost $350 million or higher. Money will have to come out of existing NASA programs, the space station project, which would be slowed down, or in space science and applications, which would have to be delayed anyways. And then since this is the 30-year anniversary of the Challenger disaster, I kind of researched what people had to say now 30 years later. So according to 30 years after Challenger disaster, what have we learned by Lonnie Sheckelman? Hugh Harris wrote, despite these obstacles, the former and longtime director of NASA's Public Affairs Office wrote last year that it is critical that the nation not lose a passion for the space program, which he says has enhanced almost every part of our lives from agriculture to transportation. There's no program in history that has been more effective per dollar spent in the creation of new knowledge, new products, and new jobs to improve the quality of life here and around the world. And then Howard McCurdy, a specialist in space policy at American University in Washington, D.C., told USA Today the business model collapsed, and it wasn't just the business model for shuttle. It was the business model for shuttle, station, Mars, and the moon. It was like a corporation going down. So that is the gains and losses of the Challenger, and next is Bella with a summary of the aftermath. Thank you.